that stuff. The Human Torch is denied a bank loan. Yes, I love it. Hey, that looks kind of nice. Welcome everybody to Blurred Lines. This is your man Cam. With me, as always, is
The other Cam, new year, new injury. How do you do, folks?
as well as
This is the Dark Lord of the Caribbean Sith, known as Dark Coconut.
and as always, Professor D, bringing it in.
Yeah, this is the Professor, the Doomsayer. I'm here to tell you all the things you don't want to hear, but actually need to hear.
And we're back. We're talking animation. Basically, what we're watching right now, because 2024 has been a really good year for animation, just in general. I mean, anime. There's always dope anime happening all the time, but there's been a big, huge push in the I would say Americas of basically just dropping really good, solid animes. Everything from Arcane season two, which is a co-production with France, by the way. To what if season three just came out. We've also had X-Men 97 came out earlier this year, which was also amazing. So just in general, like we're starting to see a good renaissance of like English language animation on top of what was already going on, which is the great anime stuff that's always been going on. But to first start it off, I would say the first thing we can talk about is actually, you know what? I'll talk about it. First thing we'll talk about will be Secret Level, which was an anthology show on Amazon based around video game properties. One of the hilarious thing is some of those properties were games that lasted like 7 seconds. Shout out to you, Concord. But in general, they had games like Dungeons and Dragons. They had Mega Man. And then they basically did little short. Oh, Pac Man was another one, but they did little shorts around these different games in CG for about maybe like anywhere from 3 minutes to like a full on 17 minutes. But the Secret Level itself was actually really cool. One, I love anthologies just because it makes it more fun and you can kind of just do different things. But also, I thought they did a good job of taking these different types of games and then breathing in new life in. And so, for me, like Mega Man was really dope. Sifu was really really cool. Armored Core with the guest appearance cameo by Keanu Reeves was really 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 dope. And you got to see some really cool things about basically what these creators took these IPs and then to try to do some different stuff into it. So Secret Level is definitely like one of the ones that I like this much just this year, just in general. Like there's some were better than others, but in overall, it was actually really really cool. Did you guys watch Secret Level? I know some of you guys did, not everybody did, but if you did, Cam, tap in a little bit.
Sorry, I was trying to reach my mute. Unfortunately, I did not get to Secret Level. Uh, it was so much content over there that I couldn't even get to it. But I did hear about how it had a cool concept, and it highlighted some games that were not so successful on consoles, which was very interesting. They even talked about a game that I think didn't even come out, but they did a animation for it, which is really interesting but weird at the same time. But it has been getting a lot of buzz. It's on my radar for sure. But I can't add too much to it because, again, right now we have that. We have the Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrm. We have the Watchmen. That's on, I think, Max right now. Creature Commando. There's a lot of things on my plate right now, and the Soul 11 one was like last on my list. And I stumbled upon Watchmen because it's been out for a minute, and I was just like, "Oh yeah, let me just watch this." But no, I definitely want to get to Soul 11 one because it does have an interesting concept, and it's kind of like a video game. What if in a sense, because I don't know the stories of all the games, but it's just saying, hey, this is what happens when we drop you in this world of whatever game, and here's a story, and it ends. So
Yeah, definitely, and it was actually pretty cool because I think they like a lot. Like I said, Concord specifically because Concord was a basically it was a third person shooter that was supposed to be akin to like a Call of Duty or Overwatch or whatever. But the game dropped, flopped hard. just a lot of bad mechanics and a lot of other things. And so to the point where like it pretty much it was supposed to be a live service game, got cut, but the short in Secret Level was actually really cool. The other notable standouts were Sifu, which was really cool. Mega Man was also really good. They did one on Unreal Tournament that was also interesting as well. And then Dungeons and Dragons, Armored Core, and then they also had one that was specifically like Pac-Man, but it was like almost like a horror take on Pac-Man, which was very very weird, but also kind of cool. So it was something that was like didn't expect it to be that way, but I was like, okay, this is cool. But overall, it was by the same creators as Love, Sex, and Robots that was on Netflix that got a couple seasons. So that way, you know, A, quality is going to be top notch, B, animation is going to be top notch. And so they just did a really good job of just like taking these properties and then taking them to different places. With speaking on Lord of the Rings, like I know you guys were really into Rings of Power. You guys watched the whole thing. How did Rings of Power match up to this animation one? Where you know this kind of came out of nowhere too. Is War of Rohirrm, I think it was is, and I'm not even sure. I didn't even know one. I just saw a poster for it, and I just knew it was Lord of the Rings. But other than that, I had no other context.
D, I'll let you take that one because that was in the theaters. It's not on streaming sites right now. So
Well, interesting enough, I didn't really go to the theater to see it. I did Amazon stay at home, rent in the theater mode. Initially, I had planned to go to the theater, but then with the weather and just general laziness, I was like, forget it. I don't want to go to a movie theater. So I rented it at home. But it was really good. It's got some work. I think as the animators, they have some work to do in terms of figuring out what will work and what doesn't work. There seemed to be a little some inconsistency because I'm not as well versed with animation. I won't even try to describe what I was seeing. I think when you guys happen to actually see it, then perhaps it will we can revisit it and you can and maybe I can better describe what I'm saying. But as far as the narrative itself and taking a bit of Tolkien's legendarium or his mythology and telling a story, what you realize is that Tolkien has so many stories buried in his 5,000 year history or 5,000 year period that marks the third age. And you know, we literally, you know, because there's no more references to Numenor or to the Vala or to Valinor or any of that. Now that stuff is gone. This is after the changing of the world. This is after the this is after Iluvatar removed Valinor from Aman. Period. You can't get there unless you actually. So, you know, you don't get those same and like the way you saw religion and culture in you see it in Rings of Power. It's totally different because now it's 2,000 years later, and all of this time has passed. All these civilizations have risen and fallen, and I think in the same way that that happens in reality in real life, when you look at the history of humanity, you know, there were so many civilizations that existed and that just ended, and they existed irregardless to what's happening now. Like you see humanity now, and then you visited those civilizations, they look totally disconnected. And so when you look at War of the Rohirrim and compare it to the other stories that we've gotten pull from Tolkien's universe, it's a good example of how there are just all of these things that happen, and you could literally go anywhere and not kind of and not get bored with his world. The only biggest criticism I have for it is that I don't think it, you know, the story kind of mirrors the situation with uh what is it? EO, what's her name in the main trilogy? Eowyn? Is it Eowyn? The Shield Maiden. Help
Oh
yeah,
me
yeah,
out, Cam.
yep.
Yeah, Eowyn. Eowyn, the story of this princess Hera is somewhat similar to Eowyn's story, but just in a much grander way. Being women in this sort of medieval patriarchal setting uh, that have that ironically are princesses, are these nobility, but they have very little power and agency, and are completely looked past when it comes to inheritance and the ability to contribute to the kingdom in more than just being um, there to breed or whatever. So that part, I don't know if they gave us any more. And then the actress uh, who played Eowyn in the original trilogy, um, she did the voiceover for the narration as Eowyn, um, but obviously speaking from the future, telling the story of Hera and the War of the Rohirrim. But it's a good animated feature. A little long because it is over 2 hours, which is
Mm.
a big kind of adjustment if you have watched a lot of animated features. Especially the ones in America, they're usually at most 90 minutes, at most an hour and 45 minutes. Yeah,
We are talking about Lord of the Rings, though.
that's another point. That's a good point.
Facts.
We are talking about Tolkien and we are talking about Lord of the Rings. And here's what I'll say. They used the runtime well. There was not a time where a period as I watched between each act where I was like, oh, this is boring. I'm waiting on will you just get, or I didn't, as I always say, there was never a time where I looked at either my watch, the clock on my phone, or pause to see where where it was in the runtime because I was ready to move on. That didn't happen. So in that regard, I think once again you have another successful animated feature from Warner Brothers Animation. I don't know if they needed a theatrical release. I think that was audacious, and I don't know if it paid off, but I haven't looked at the returns, and it was released during the holiday. So yeah, with that regard, I don't know if the production was or the distribution was smart, but it's a good, solid animated feature.
A few questions before we kind of wrap this up. Um, I'm assuming this happens third, well, obviously third age, the Dominion of Men. The elves are gone. The spirits are gone. This is just all about the human world of Tolkien's after the rings have been destroyed, right? Is it during that
No,
time?
no, this is the third age. This will be a couple thousand years after Gondor has been established by the Numenorians, the exiled Numenorians,
So Sauron's
surviving
around.
Numenorians.
Sauron's
Sauron
around.
is around.
Okay.
Sauron is even referenced in the film.
Okay.
Really well done. I like the way they did that in terms of saying you know who this is and you know what this means, what's happening here, to orient the audience of where they are. So this is probably still a couple thousand years before Sauron makes his move. Um,
This
Mm.
okay. I was gonna say this kind of reminds me of what I've been wanting, and I hate to segue into this. The Star Wars universe where we tell the other stories,
Oh,
where
absolutely. But
so
we could chase that thought because that is a good point. But this is what they were doing. They achieved that because again, this is and what they did was they told us a significant myth in his legendarium, which is how did the Helm's Deep get its name? It used to be called the Hornbug. And so you get that in the story as well, and it's a well done narrative, and also showing how Gondor and the Numenorians were closer to um, the English medieval, uh, you know, and the Rohirrim are more inspired by the Norse, the Vikings, and uh, Scandinavian iconography. They don't have a big castle or keep; they have the long haul. similar to Viking culture. So that also was more on display, and how that was different, and how the Rohirrm were, seen as subordinates to Gondor, and when they need help, they always called on Gondor, but Helm sort of became this stalwart. It was like, whatever, we don't need to always call Gondor when we can solve our own problems. And that's sort of the crust of what kicks the narrative into high gear. So again, very good use of Tolkien's Legendarium. Whether you enjoyed the animation or not, you want to see more. I could see them doing some of the action of the First Age in this same way, where we show even showing the music of the Ainur, and when they create that 5 minutes of a animated feature, boom, you knock it out, and then you get into when Morgoth is on Middle Earth, and when he's become, doing his thing and all of the fights. If they follow that track, they'll be just fine.
In fun fact, like it's the same studio that did animes like Tower of God, the Blade Runner anime, which is really dope, by the way, as well as Ninja Kamui, which was on HBO Max, I believe. Which
I do believe that's Cam approved, is it not?
it's stylized, super dope. Story, but
Oh,
overall, it's good. It was good.
let me interrupt real quick. We're talking about Ninja Kamui?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. First 3 episodes, maybe 4 episodes, maybe 5. Fire.
Yep.
Goes downhill.
Then it just
Oh.
Goes downhill.
Just,
So that's 5 out of how many?
9, 10.
yeah.
Now, just watch it. Just watch it. No, just watch it, because the animation is amazing. But
Okay.
I'm not gonna go too far into this. I'm just gonna say,
Mhm.
when he got away from the ninjutsu aspect of the story and he went into like this mech thing, it kind of took away from it. But
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I'll even push it to 6. No, it's worth a watch. It's worth
Okay.
it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's just that I was like, I stopped caring near the last 2 episodes, and I just finished it.
And it's a full 13 episodes. Like those first, Cam's right, 4 to 6, depending on, super dope. Then the other half kind of dissipates. But
Okay.
from a visual aspect of it, really dope. And then also the same studio has a thing called Lazarus, which is looking really, really dope. Comes out later on this year, which is something that everyone should definitely like take a notice for. On the anime tip, I've been watching Dan to Dan, and this one has probably one of the best theme songs of all time.
Absolutely.
It to the point where it's taken fire to all the socials, all the things, all the kids love it, blah 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 blah. Dan to Dan it's hard to explain what it is, but it's a mix of sci-fi, fantasy, action, comedy,
Horror.
romance, horror with a sprinkle of like teenage angst.
It sounds like an eclectic madness of the good variety.
100%. And it's one of those ones where you watch the first episode and you're like, what the hell is going on? And then you watch the second episode and you're like, this is dope, but what the hell is going on? And then you watch the third episode and you're like, I have a better understanding what's going on, but it's still crazy.
I'll give you guys a real short synopsis. It basically follows 2 high school students. One, the girl, one of the main characters, she doesn't believe in spirits. The guy, who's kind of like a nerd, believes in like aliens and whatnot. And they both put themselves in a situation where they go try to prove each other wrong, where the girl goes into like a haunted place. The other guy goes into a place where he gets possessed by evil spirit. They both unlock powers, and then they fight all of these supernatural psychic kinetic ability characters, and you just follow them. And as they interact with other students, they also unlock their powers. It's very ridiculous, but it's very dope, very fun story. It's easy to get entrenched in the story, but it takes like 3 episodes to figure out what's going on, but in a good way. You're just like, how is this working? Like, what is going on? Type of deal. Very fun. It's kind of in the vein of Chainsaw Man, which has become very popular. Very obscure. You look at it from the surface, you're just like, what the hell is this? And then the more you watch, you're like, this is really good.
Yeah,
And the thing
I
about
think
it
it. Oh,
is,
go ahead.
sorry, the thing about it is it also takes on different art styles as you go through. So, in one scene, you may go through like four different styles of art, and it sounds chaotic with all of this stuff going on in terms of themes, in terms of different types of fiction, in terms of types of storytelling, and it totally isn't. I don't know who wrote this thing, but is all over the place as it is in terms, whoever conceptualized this, in terms of art, in terms of storytelling style, in terms of the different topics that it touches on, all in one. Like it'll go through all of these different changes sometimes in one scene, and it just all works. Like Cam said, it's impossible to explain fully beyond what he just said, because that doesn't capsulize all of it. There's so much going on. It's really, really well done.
I will
Yeah,
add on about the title. It's kind of in the same vein as the Peacemaker intro. It's like, what the hell am I like? What is this? But it's kind of catchy, and you're kind of
Mm,
entertained by it. In a different aspect, Peacemaker's intro, I was like, this is like one of the greatest intros ever to a show. Danadan is kind of the same way, but it's just catchy. So like when it comes on, it's literally dun, 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 that's what you hear. You're just like, all right,
and it's
cool.
catchy to the point where the guys who wrote the theme song have their own music video,
Yep.
millions of views on YouTube. Like
yeah,
Cam was
yeah,
saying, it's
Yeah.
its own phenomenon at this point.
and I think also too, like the so I this is so the most animated that I watch, I rarely ever go read the manga. The ones that I really get into, I'll go read it because I'm like, okay, this is way too good to not read.
Hmm.
Solo Leveling is one of them. Mushoku Tenshin is another one that I will watch some read the manga. But like this is one where like I actively want to go read it because this is way too good. And then one of the
Mm.
things that they do really well is it's the genre bending. Like one episode completely can be on some spirits and horror and all that kind of stuff, and then the next episode is completely on some science fiction, random shit like that, and then the next episode is straight up teen angst, romance, like awkward, shy teen
School,
school stuff going on,
yeah.
and but it all blends perfectly, and it's super fun, and it has the same ridiculousness of stuff like a Fooly Cooley or like a Kill a Kill or a Gurren Lagann, where they're just like it's so ridiculous of like what they're doing, but it's a ridiculous in a good way, and I think like I a lot of I know folks that have watched it and the first episode they're just like, this is weird. I can't really get into it. And then I know other people that are longtime anime people that watch it and they're just like, this is fucking amazing. What? So I'm really happy that one, it got turned into an anime series, which is great. And then two, because it's still going right now as a manga. It's relatively new. And then also two, that it actually got people got the legs to like let them be weird. Like it's just a weird ass show, and it's a good weird. And it's one of those things where it's like that creativity where people, some people will watch anime and kind of think it's like, oh, it's kind of the same type of tropes all the time, which is very true in anime. But this is one where like this is truly one of those ones that's really weird, really interesting, and I'm glad that they whoever does the marketing and the licensing for it, because you can find this on Netflix, you can find this on
Hmm.
Crunchyroll. I think it's even on Hulu as well. So they're really trying to make sure that this one particular show is accessible to a lot of places, so people can really tap into it and really check it out. The other one I was looking at, and as everyone knows, we are all Trekkies here, and as Trekkies, we do watch all Trek shows. And one of the ones that, and I give credit to Josh about this, is Star Trek Prodigy, which is a Nickelodeon show. Which I was just like, why do I need to watch a kid show again? But he was like, no, you should watch it because it's kind of good. I was like, okay, so I checked it out. First season, fire, really dope. Good kid situations, but a good tie-in to like Voyager. Essentially, basically became a Voyager extended season, if you want to put it that way. And it was had a lot of heart, had a lot of good,
A
interesting
Voyager sequel,
characters.
if you will.
Yeah, Voyager sequel, and it brought back Cap Admiral Janeway. Salute to her, and she got good voice credits. And so that
Hmm.
first season was really good. Unfortunately, it got canceled unceremoniously, and we're kind of like, oh, we're sad. This sucks. Blah 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 blah. Somehow, some way, in the shuffle of all the Paramount crap, it got renewed for a second season, which premiered in France for some strange reason. And then later on, 6 months later, got dumped onto Paramount Plus and Netflix, full season two, like out
No,
of
just
nowhere.
Netflix. Just
Yeah,
Netflix.
just on Netflix. And so then I remember I literally just like happened to see it because I was just curious about it. And I was just like, wait, a whole season is back on Netflix for no reason. So, anyways, Star Trek Prodigy dropped in 100% of a spiritual sequel to Voyager, and 100% knocks it out the park. Has all the heart of what you would expect from Star Trek,
Hmm.
a lot of the good tissue that you enjoy from the sci-fi aspect of it, bringing in lovable characters that you like from Voyager and bringing them in and making it make sense of why they're there and all that kind of stuff. And then on the third thing too is, again, we always talk about this before. We really enjoy when people take IPs and put them in different types of formats and media and to expand it. We just talked about how Lord of the Rings had an anime that was really good and expanded that world. And then this is Star Trek, same thing, where like this shouldn't work as well as it does, and it just really works. Like you truly feel like you're watching a Star Trek episode, live action, the same type of stakes. They bring in good cameos like Chakotay. Will Wheaton comes in with his Crusher. You have Janeway, of course, and then just all these little bits and pieces they bring in from a Star Trek lore that just really hose it in. That as a Star Trek fan, I felt really like happy about watching this and investing time into this quote unquote kid show, and that really fit nicely within the lore of Star Trek Voyager.
You know what it kind of reminded me of is similarly. You had said something about Rebels and when how Rebels was looked at as a kid show, and then until people actually watched and they saw, oh, this show has real storytelling stakes. You know,
Yep.
there's no, this isn't everybody wins and go home happy at the end of the day type of storytelling. There's actually some consequential narration here. And I think that's sort of how I saw Prodigy after fashion, because initially we all had the same reaction. Star Trek animated on Nickelodeon, who cares?
Yep.
But it almost felt irreverent, right? But then Josh, as usual, dove into it and it's like, no, it's not what you think. It's marketed that way, but it's not. It's sort of a kind of hook you in, but there's something there for Trekkies of old to enjoy, along with probably introducing a new generation to Trek with that lineage of connecting Voyager as well.
Apparently, that was the plan with the show. The whole point of the series was to try to get it to appeal, get to plug in basically another generation of there's that phrase, next generation, another generation of younger viewers to continue on the viewership and the sort of community of Trek beyond us 40 and 50-year-olds who grew up on it, grew up on the original series, the animated series. We still have bedtimes when Star Trek Next Generation debuted. Like, it's been around for a while, so it stands to reason and is a smart play. If they got even a little bit, even a few kids, relatively speaking, a few thousand new kids to watch, and those kids stick with Trek or they have curiosity about the larger Star Trek universe, mission accomplished. And I think if I'd be willing to wager, if it snagged us, it probably snagged kids in all
Yeah.
likelihood.
Yeah, definitely. And it got a good they get a good job of balancing, again, going back to Rebels as well, where it's like it's a quote unquote kids show, but they have adult
Mhm.
themes, and so both two people can watch it from a younger age or an older age and still get something out of it. And I think Prodigy accomplished that really well. By, like I said, if you never watch Star Trek and you only watch that show, you'd be like, "Oh, these are interesting characters. I want to know what's going on. This is a cool like story arc." Or if you know anything about Star Trek lore, you're super invested in like, "Oh shoot, there's Crusher. Oh, there's Chakotay. Oh, there's freaking Janeway." Those types of things.
Mhm.
And then much in the same vein, Lower Decks finished up their series, and quite possibly one of my favorite just Star Trek things in general. And part of the
Hmm.
reason is one, Lower Decks is just super nerdy in their Star Trek lore. Two, it's really funny and irreverent, and they just enjoy the playground that they're in. And then three, they just have a lot of fun. Like one of my favorite episodes is not even in Lower Decks; it's actually in Strange New Worlds, and they basically do a crossover with a cartoon and a live action, and they make it make sense, but two, they make it really really well. And I just saw a clip with Jonathan Franks, aka Riker, who directs a lot of Star Trek stuff. That's his like second hustle, but he was saying that when he had two of the cast members from Lower Decks on on in their cast for the show, they were improvising, they were riffing and all that kind of stuff, and they were commenting like, well, we don't really riff in Star Trek, but this is great and this is hilarious. So yo, keep doing what you're doing. And
Yeah, and
then
apparently it like opened up all the other actors, and then they started playing off each other, and then they started playing off of the animated series actors who were there live on set, and it's easily one of the best Star Trek anythings that has happened in the last probably 20 years.
100%. I've watched that episode multiple times, and it's hilarious, and it's funny, and it's fun, and it has all the tinges of things of the reason why we like Star Trek in the first place. We like the science fiction aspect of it. We like the characters. We like the little nuances and little like small like inside jokes and all that kind of thing. And one of the things that Lower Decks does really well is does that. It takes a lot of the lore of Star Trek and it just pokes fun of a lot of it and then adds in little pieces on it to kind of remember. So if you're a lifelong Star Trek fan and you watch Lower Decks, you're laughing through everything because you understand every
Hmm.
single reference. But if you just come in cold and it's just still funny, it's a funny show. It's done really well. The animation is great in a way that works for what their subject matter is. And so I just think that like I'm glad that Lower Decks kind of went out on top, if you want to put it that way,
Hmm.
and just like really even this last season where it's just a lot of fun, where they just have a lot of fun with it. They poke fun at so much of the Star Trek lore, and I like that every episode that you watch, you can tell that the writers are fans of the show. And so they enjoy Star Trek, and now they're making sure they can poke fun of it in the right way to keep it
And those
And
last two episodes are pure hilarity. Oh man.
moving.
it also seems like they've and if you're a new fan of Star Trek or you're interested in it and you're coming into it, Lower Decks is nestled going to Cam's point about the making the references to what 60 plus years of Star Trek now. If you're watching Lower Decks and you haven't seen the Next Generation, and obviously they make several references to the stuff that happened in the Next Generation, it's right there. You could just go right out of the Lower Decks cell and go right to the Next Generation cell and chase that rabbit hole. And I think that's the sort of uniqueness of the streaming generation is that, unlike for all of us when we were growing up, we had to wait or fish out access to it. If wait for it to come on TV or go to the movies and see it, and then wait for and hopefully have the money to buy a VHS or a DVD when that happened. But now you can just kind of get into it. And that's why I think Star Trek took advantage of that better than Star Wars has in terms of here's what we have, here's some new stuff. Um, Go for it. Everybody kind of see what it is. I as much as I've criticized Discovery in the past, I give them credit for trying something different. That's the only thing I give them credit for. The execution wasn't great, but they did try something different. They tried to do something new within the mythology as well as continue to push the mythology. And the success is that they added some memorable characters, but we'll forget about most of the storytelling aside from the first two seasons. But Star Wars, I think, is struggling with that in terms of everything is there. This generation could be gobbling it up as well as and demanding new things. But when I talk to members of the new generation and I'm like, hey, have you checked out The Mandalorian? They're like, nope. And The Mandalorian is, to me, one of the best. It's a really good hero's journey, and a good aspect. I mean, I'm biased because outside of the Jedi and the Sith, well, the Sith and Jedi in that order, I love the Mandalorians. Ever since I played the Knights of the Old Republic years ago, the Mandalorians have been my favorite, which is why I was at first disappointed that the Mandalorian TV show was not set in the Old Republic during the height of Mandalore. But after it had been destroyed and all that stuff in the boring Skywalker saga. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, the good thing that both Lord X and Prodigy does is they continue the overall world building that that's already set. And like I said, like Lower Decks is set right between basically Next Generation and Voyager, essentially. And Prodigy
No, Lower Decks is Next
after Voyager?
Generation, between Next Generation and Picard.
Oh, okay. Okay, there you go. And then what's it called? Prodigy is a little bit after Voyager, right? Yeah, after Voyager.
It's well after Voyager, yeah.
Yeah. And
I
so
want to say that's also post Picard.
Yeah. So I mean,
it's like a full century after Voyager, right? Like it's like
half a century. Everyone's
Prodigy?
old. Yeah, Prodigy's like everyone's old, but they're not old. They're like 50 years.
Yeah.
I thought Janeway in that was like a hologram.
She's in real life, in Star Trek real life, she's an admiral.
Yeah,
she's an active admiral.
So she's still alive. Okay.
So it's like 40, 50 years from basically Voyager, if you want to put it that way.
So it would have taken place around
the timeline.
The movie?
What, Nemesis?
Where she appears as the admiral, right? So it would have been like after that.
Definitely after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to say that's also post Next Generation, post the movies, but pre-Picard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes
sense. So it's not quite 40, 50 years. It's probably
a little bit less than 40, probably something like that. But again, going
closer
back
to 20, closer to 20, closer to
20. But again,
time being relative, of course,
especially for Star Trek.
Right. Yes.
But also it's one of those things where it's like, you're setting something that's playing in the playground and doing a good job, and that's something that Star Wars still hasn't done yet. And Star Wars Visions is maybe the closest it's gotten in terms of just like letting people run wild in that sandbox. But it's in general, like Star Wars just hasn't figured out how that's gonna work, right? And they've been trying, they've been missing. I have not watched Skeleton Crew, aka Goonies in Space. I hear okay things about it. Maybe we'll check out. So lastly, with a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, there has been some strides on the Warner Brothers DC front, and there's a couple things. One is Watchmen, two is Creature Commandos, and they've been kind of putting eventually, finally, I want to say they're starting to get back to almost their former glory of DC animation. I'm not gonna say all the way, but they're getting there. And so the other thing I forgot to Crisis, which I have not watched at all, but Crisis, Creature Commandos, and freaking Watchmen. Those are three things right now within the DC Warner Brothers situation that have been released over the last 6 months. Or is it good? Is it worth watching? And what do we feel about it? I'm gonna go to Cam first because I know he watched. He punched in with the Watchmen already.
I'm gonna start off by saying from the last pod, I asked for Lobo. What do I get? We got Lobo.
You still got wait, but you just got your casting though. Jason Momoa is cast as Lobo.
Look, the fact that I put it in the air and it came to fruit.
You threw it out into the universe and it came back to you, bro.
True. Listeners of the pod, go listen to the last pod. I said I don't think we're gonna get it, but I want to see Lobo. Boom. Prayers have been answered. Anyway,
within a month. Look at that. Look at God.
I brought LeBron James to LA. I brought Lobo to the screen. Anyway, Oh, we got a special guest here, a little one. Uh, I'm gonna say both DC's renditions of this new. Well, I've never heard of Creature Commandos. It's pretty good. Um, to keep it short and simple, it's a James Gunn animation, true and true. Uh, it's basically Suicide Squad with creatures, and it's very enjoyable, very interesting dialogue, very characters you want to follow, and I like it. I've been digging it. I've been following each episode. I think I finished it. As far as the Watchmen thing, it is true to the comic, which I love. And shout out to I think it's Phil Lamar who's part of this, one of the voice actors in that. But he has a
Hmm.
small minor role. But everything in there is true to form, true to Gibbons' uh, actual comic, and it's a very interesting. I think it's like a couple hours, maybe a little under 2 hours, maybe 2 hours. It was pretty long, and I forgot that they had split it. I'm like waiting for the next episode. I was like, oh, that's not even out yet. So it's chapter one. Anybody who's familiar with the story, you can go. If not familiar, you can go Google it or Wikipedia it. It still holds up as one of the greatest comics I've ever read. This animation by DC. Look, DC for all its negative in the movie space, live action, they've never let me down with animation. Never. Anything I've watched DC animated has been money. And to say, and with that to say, this Watchmen's rendition, this adaptation, there's no changes. Now I'm curious. I'm curious if they're gonna keep it straight to the comic or they're gonna do the Snyder. I think was Snyder who directed. I'm not sure because they did make some minor changes in that. And now I looked at that movie. It's okay. I'm not mad at that movie. I don't have any real big gripes about the movie. I was like, oh, it's cool. They did their adaptation. But this version of it, the animation part, man, fire must watch for any Watchmen fan to watch it and give their 2 cents on it.
So a couple things. So the guy who basically adapted Watchmen to the animated for the animation is J. Michael Straczynski of Babylon 5 fame, one of the great minds of science of modern day science fiction. And he, like you say, he basically is adapted it. I don't want to say frame for frame. They're minor changes, like you say, but they're all to the benefit of the storytelling. And I would imagine that the original author who wrote Watchmen, Alan Moore, I can imagine him watching it and be like, oh, finally somebody gets it. You know what I mean? Like I could see him finally, because his whole thing, like, he's famous for ranting about how nobody knows how to write anymore, and the people who want to adapt his material all just want to bastardize it and sort of use it for material gain, and that's not what he wrote it for. And he's very anti-establishment in that way, rightly so, and anti-corporate. I would imagine he watched that and was like, all right, somebody did. He finally was done. My joint was done correctly. As far as Creature Commandos is perfect. I don't have a problem with it at all. It's hilarious. It's very well told. It's another well told James Gunn story. Um, and yeah, there's nothing to say except watch it. Like what else? It's great voice actors, great voice direction. And what was the third one, Cam? What was the other one?
What was it? Creature Commandos, Watchmen, and Crisis, which will
Oh,
let
Christ.
Willis. I haven't watched any of the Crisis. I've heard mixed bags about all of them. Creature Commandos, I enjoy. Their voice casting is amazing. They have Idria Varma, who has been in. She was been in Star Wars stuff. She has been one of my favorite shows that no one ever knows about, which is Human Target. She's been in a bunch of other stuff, but she's a great actress, but also a great voice actress. But Creature Commandos is really, really fun. They do a dope job of just tying Creature Commandos to everything else that Gunn's already been doing. Going back to what D'Angelo always says, one line of dialogue where there's a part where Amanda Waller and Rick Flag Sr. are talking, and they mention Peacemaker, and then Rick Flag Sr. has a little moment where he was like, "Yeah, that dude fucking killed my kid." So at some point, we're going to have words, and that little small little like literally it was like a 3 second thing, but that ties everything back to Peacemaker and Suicide Squad, the Suicide Squad. And so it's
Yep.
so interesting where it's like again going back to small things like that where it's like you have a cartoon that references two shows, a movie and a show with one line of dialogue, seamless and easy, and then they move on from there and you have a whole Rick Flag Senior story. So I think that's the thing where we can really go back where it's like Gunn's having a lot of fun playing with the different types of mediums of having movies, having TV, having animation, and being able to tell the stories that he wants to tell with all these different characters. And I think this is the part where he will succeed where Snyder kind of failed in that respect, where he's like, I'm going to tell these different stories in these different mediums from a large scale to a small scale, and it'll still fit and still work. And I think that's the part where I think Gunn's going to be really adept at that. Um, for Crisis, I'm gonna go to D because he's actually watched it, and you can kind of give your kind of a 2 cents on those ones.
Yeah, for sure. And just to say about the other two, Creature Commandos, Watchmen, I largely agree with what's been said. I would say with Watchmen, there's not much to say to that because it is sort of a literal adaptation. I don't know if there's much to evaluate there except for talking about the animation, which is really good. The voice acting is excellent. Um, we'll see what happens in chapter 2, but I doubt he'll deviate from Ozymandias, or excuse me, from the plan of what happens in the conclusion. As far as Crisis Part 3, um, it surprised me. That was my thought. It surprised me because I it surprised me because I didn't think that it would be good. Um, and yeah, it
Especially
surprised
considering
me.
parts 1 and 2. 1 and 2 were awful.
It's it surprised me because yes, 1 and 2 were awful, and they both were longer than they needed to be, and felt like they were meandering. We didn't get to introduce the main antagonist until halfway at the end of the second. The second one is saved by a really fun scene between the Bat family, and I feel like if you appreciate those characters, I'm talking. And what was cool was Will was it Real Friday returned as the voice of Terry McGinnis, um, as well as this was Kevin Conroy's last uh, performance as Batman for that universe, and they sort of tied it all together. But they connected it really nicely with some of the older DC animated universes, and they always tend to do that really well. But it was good because of that. It was bad because it took too long to get to that.
100%. D'Angelo had to basically tell me to watch the third one because I was like, okay, I watched the first two. I was like, it was a complete waste of time. It was completely off my radar. And he brought it up and was like, no, you need to go ahead and watch part 3. It saves the whole thing. And he's absolutely right. It 100% saves the entire thing. It's incredibly watchable. It's eventful. It's, it sort of follows a more concentric 3-act structure than the other two did. It's really well done. There's tons of shout outs. There's a Super Friends shout out for crying out loud. It ties back to the end of Justice League Apocalypse really well. It's everything ties up perfectly. I mean, there's a Batman the Animated Series shout out. Mark Hamill as the Joker, of course, is always a welcome a
It's
welcome
really
thing to
well
happen.
done too. It's a
It's
really good
incredibly
moment.
well
And I feel like if you, like all of us, have followed the lineage of that and knowing that Kevin Conroy is no longer with us and all of that stuff, it's one of those moments where you're like, man, I'm glad that I went along with this ride, because that's a good cameo slash final appearance.
done. And you just have to sit through the first two. Like, that's the best thing I can tell you. You just make your way through the first two. There's wholesome goodness in the third part.
And I would say, really quick, the second one, again, it's saved in the third act because it ups the stakes are finally real. You understand what's really at stake.
Right.
And again, there's this really good dynamic and payoff between the Bat fam. And the reason it's interesting is because this version of Batman is from an Earth where he did not do that. He did not recruit any of the
Of his child
of
soldiers.
his of his child soldiers, exactly. And so this version is judging the one that did really harshly. And so there's just a lot of dynamic. Helena is there, his daughter by Selena. Of course, Damien is there, and Damien is like, he's father no matter what Earth he comes from. So how dare you disrespect him? So Damien like pops off a fight with his stepbrothers and his half sister because because who are they to disrespect father or to question father?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really good moment. So I would say 2 is saved because of that.
Can I ask something real quick? What is it streaming on?
Max.
All 3
Okay.
are available on Max now.
Okay, I think I've seen some clips of this. There's a scene where I guess it's alternate reality. You know, just confirm yes or no, and I'll watch it. But there's a scene where it looks like the whole Bat family confronts this alternate timeline Batman, and Batman says that's very irresponsible of him.
Yep, that's
because
it.
of how, okay, I've been seeing this clip for months, and I didn't know what it was referencing. Now I know.
Yeah, and that's why everybody's trying to push for Jensen Ackles to be the next the next DCU live action Batman. I mean, much like Cavill with Geralt and Momoa with Lobo, he's kind of been auditioning for the role as the animated voice for the last, since he left Supernatural, even before that.
Yeah.
So
and he's good at it too. That to his credit.
he
like
is
he's
good.
He's good. He definitely has he has the gravitas, he has the voice and all that kind of stuff. And like even from like I said, the build and everything else, it all works. So yeah, I could definitely see it and be okay with this. Like, oh yeah, this is fine.
But that's it. It's from part 1. And yeah, I think you'll if you can slosh through most of part 1 and then the first 2 acts of part 2 and get to that Batman, because again, the Bat fam, if you like the Bat fam and that whole dynamic in the history, it's great seeing all of them converge onto this Batman who is like, I don't have a use for any of you. And
he's like, father, why are you calling me? Like, why? Whoa, back up. Why are all of you like genuflecting at my mere presence? Just you got to relax. You got to stop.
But they also all use it as a moment to vent their frustrations in general with Bruce,
with each other and with Bruce,
with each other and with Bruce, because the first to pop off is of course Dick Grayson, and of course he would be the one that's most frustrated with Batman Bruce. So it's a good moment. It's a good moment.
I will say this. You said it should be. It's kind of hard to slush through it. I watch Merlin on Sci-Fi. I can watch anything.
Well, there you go. With that said, I don't think you'll have any issues.
Merlin and the BBC Robin Hood, where they kill Robin Hood with a whole season and a half to go. Those 2 are like my same level of like schlock. Like yikes! Like Merlin, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, and then I was like, what is going on? And then Robin Hood on BBC, I was watching it. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then they kill Robin, and they have a whole another 2 seasons after that.
Listen, British television gets a lot of leeway.
Wild. wild.
I'll say this: the only reason I watched Merlin is just because I was into the King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and Merlin. I loved all that stuff growing up as a kid. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch this, and it was cheesy, it was terrible, but I got through it because I'm a fan. So
But that was like the story of all things sci-fi back in the day, and that during that time, like one in
100%.
every 5 shows from sci-fi during that era
100%.
was watchable, and I think the only one that comes to mind is Battlestar
Yeah,
Galactica.
it's the only
I will
one.
not
And it
stand for sci-fi channel for classic sci-fi channel slander on this pod.
I mean, I was
it
Listen,
got me. It got me through some boring ass days, man. I turn on sci-fi and watch some cool stuff.
yep.
that's what I'll say. I joke, but I love sci-fi back in the day.
I was gonna say
I
sci-fi channel, like
I watched
no, I'm just telling the truth. The stuff was largely bad, and you know it. It
but
was either
bad in a
it
good
was either
way.
yeah, but bad in a good way. It was unapologetically
Yep.
bad. I mean, there was movies called Python. Sharknado is what emerged from
hey,
the end of that era.
listen,
1, 2, 3,
Sharknado
4,
birthed like
and
5
5.
different sequels, buddy. So
Oh,
somebody was watching it.
there's a scene in Sharknado to tell you how popular Sharknado became. There is a scene in Sharknado where literally George R. R. Martin, and this is like in the middle of the second or third season of Game of Thrones, so it's like at the popularity is like going crazy. So he's popular now. He's in the theater and gets ate by a shark, which is
You gotta be
apparently
kidding me.
something that he wanted to happen.
Yes. I love it.
So
Really?
I
that's just an
love it.
example
So wait a
of
minute, wait a
how
minute. So he watches. So he watches the movies and wanted to be eaten by a shark in one of the
Yes.
movies, and
Let's
they
go.
basically
and
just
they were like, yeah, you're George R. R. Martin. You're like the father of Game of Thrones. Yes.
that's
You
awesome.
you can sit in the theater and yes, we will throw a shark at you. And
Yep.
yes, that shark will devour you.
I
That is
mean,
amazing.
That is no different from having your random stormtrooper be Daniel Craig.
yep. Exactly.
100%.
Oh,
Same
100%.
yeah.
difference.
Oh
Same.
yeah.
Same.
Or in Game of Thrones, Rob McElhenney, who is Mac in It's Always Sunny and also the creator of It's Always Sunny, is one of the Unsullied in one of the episodes of Game of Thrones when they
Yep.
first
Nice.
introduced the Unsullied. Because and if you there's an episode of Sunny, Benioff and Weiss have written several episodes of. They're fans, so they
Mm.
found out. The Game of Thrones writers found out that the It's Always Sunny writers were huge fans, and vice versa, and they started working. So there is an entire episode where both Weiss and Benioff appear on camera in It's Always Sunny as lifeguards at a water park who don't give a shit.
That is
which is
amazing.
which is like again, it's
Amazing.
and this is the same in Westworld. There's a scene in the third or fourth season of Westworld where literally Benioff or Weiss are they have one of the behavior pads and they're literally working with Drogon and one of the one of the like it's literally
One of
Drogon.
the parks. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
and one of the parks, one of the behavior
It,
texts, and it's if you look, it's Weiss and Benioff.
and I think
That's
those are the
that's kind
that's
of
the things that I like the most when you get those crossovers where people are just generally fans of the show.
awesome.
And like recently they had Abbott Elementary has
Yeah,
a crossover with Always Sunny, and literally one, there's no reason that show should cross over
None.
with Always Sunny.
Yeah.
none except they're
But
both in Philly. That's it.
exactly. But at the same time, they both like each other's shows, and they're just like, "Yo, how can we make this happen?" So we're
Yep.
gonna make it happen. And
Bloody
it's
amazing.
and those are those things where I'm like, I think that's amazing because you need more of those collaborations on the creative front, but also just to show from a solidarity aspect of it. It's just like, yo, man, we're all in the same game. We enjoy
Hmm.
each other's works, and it's a good thing that we can cross over and talk to each other and be like, yo, I really like your show. How can I
Yeah,
figure out a way to split to put those two teams together and to make
yeah,
those cameos, make those silliness and all that kind of stuff.
and continue to show the power of why you go with creators first. You go with creators first, and you have someone figuring out the money, but let the creators run wild, because then you get things like this. I think I was showing Josh, Guillermo del Toro appears in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia as the Poppy McPoyle character,
Dude, I
and
almost passed out when you told me that.
nobody would ever have guessed that. I did not guess that until I was watching something and they were like, "Oh yeah," and I think it was he was talking about it or whatever. But and so if you, for those of you who don't know or aren't familiar with It's Always Sunny, there's a group of characters called the McPoyle family. The McPoyle family are supposed to be like inbred, like literally they hint at the
Philly
fact that they
hillbillies.
yeah, like they're Philly hillbillies where they're like having sex with each other and like all that stuff. So Poppy McPoyle is introduced as the patriarch of this weird inbred family, and that character appears like 2 times, but he's Guillermo del Toro all dressed up in as like this old hillbilly and who spouts out nonsense. Like one of his famous things is he's like, he jumps up at a wedding and he's like, "Oh, McPoyle sprung from my loins. The baby was fully formed and he tried to eat me, but I ate him first. I ate him first." And so it's
And then
very
storms
Guillermo
out.
del, and then he storms out. And that's Guillermo del Toro type of plot story that you might find, and where it's like that type of weirdness. So anyway, just to wrap it back to creators talking to each other and sharing that they're fans of each other's work, it produces amazing things like that.
Yeah, it's great when it happens, and it's hilarious when it happens, and it's done correctly. And like you say, it's a good way for shows to sort of cross pollinate and show a certain level of affection and appreciation for each other's different work.
Yeah, definitely. And I think at the end of the day, it's just like going back to what D said, it's like let creators be creators, and that will always elicit good stuff and then figure out the money on the back end. Cause then that way you can allow for the creators to, like you said, cross pollinate, have conversations. It's even as silly as the last Deadpool Wolverine movie, where a lot of that is just dumbness, and they was just kind of like, "Hey, man, what are you doing? You want to do this thing? All right, I can do it." And literally making phone calls to get people into your movie, as
And it
opposed to
became
having
a moment, a big thing where
yeah,
you're getting all of this cool stuff. I love the Fox stuff at the end where it was all about
Yeah.
celebrating these actors who have given
yep,
their all to to bring these characters to life, for better or worse. A lot of it, the fans acknowledge it wasn't them; it was the people who were writing the
yep,
storytellers.
yeah,
So the
exactly.
fact that they gave us that acknowledgement, that's what the Marvel, to I will always give them credit, and to an extension Disney, what they do best is they do serve the fan. When they really serve the fans, they serve the
Mm.
fans.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
they
I and
do.
I and if you watch the BTS, the what is it, the Assembled series on Disney Plus, and you watch the behind the scenes making of for Deadpool and Wolverine, it's literally an extension of those end credit blurbs where they have like outtakes from the Fox films. It's basically an extended, it's like the before, the middle, and the after of that. And basically just Ryan Reynolds going, I know he said he doesn't want to do it anymore, but screw what he wants, man. Like, I'm not like, that's not a thing. I'm gonna call him and see, and I'm gonna convince him to do it. And so he calls him, and he's like, "Hey, man, look, I know you said you're done, and I know you don't want to, you don't want your legacy to be just Wolverine. I know you have other things that you want to do, but I got this idea." And before he finished, he was like, "I bet." He was like, "Wait, what?" He was like, "Yeah, no. It's a good idea. I know I said I was finished, but I think if there's a good way to do it." And so immediately what sprung in Ryan Reynolds' brain was, if we're gonna do it, we have to go back to Logan and that last scene at the burial ground. And so that's where Deadpool and Wolverine begins.
and
that's awesome. I bet the selling point was like, we're gonna put you in that suit, brother, and
Yep.
in that mask for the
Yep.
and nobody's gonna tell us no.
Yep,
That was his
exactly.
idea, apparently. Apparently,
And-
that
and-
was he was like, "Yo, if I do it, I have to." One of the things that has to happen is I gotta be proper Wolverine, otherwise, there's no point.
Yeah, and even
The only thing he hadn't done.
and even Wesley said the same thing. He was just like, yeah, he's like, literally, Ryan called me up. He was like, hey man, trying to do this movie, trying to see what's going on. So when you
And
do it,
and what I love about that is that he acknowledged. He was like, "Look, man, you know, there's a lot of online faux tension between us and whatever." You know, he addresses it very lightly, but he's like, "Yo, listen, I'm doing this, that," and then dives into the Deadpool pitch. And he was like, "I'm not doing nothing, sure."
exactly.
And I love that because that's an example of there may have been tension between them after Blade Trinity, but it was never rose to the level of what the world and the internet wanted it or thought it was.
I don't think anybody really ever thought Ryan Reynolds was the one who fomented or pushed all of that stuff. That was the studios. The studio wanted that movie to be a Ryan Reynolds vehicle.
Even though and Jessica Biel, yeah, exactly. They wanted Ryan and Jessica to be because, and again, if you think about it, they were the next big thing in terms of Hollywood's you know, young folks. Wesley had been a star of the 80s and 90s, and so, but that didn't give the right to supplant his film that's called Blade
him in his own film.
And he's the reason why people are there, and literally people came to see Wesley Snipes in Blade. So all that to say, good stuff with but that's once again shows what can happen when you allow creatives to be creative.
Yeah,
100%.
And I think that's the take that I would say with this new era of DC and what James Gunn is trying to do. We talked about this before, but they're giving him the license to kind of like figure out the connective tissue. And like you said, you know, we had the casting of Lobo with Jason Momoa, which is again great casting. We talked about this multiple times, but
on the nose casting, right
on the
there,
nose,
man.
like
like all you got to do is just put some makeup on him and give him a cigar, like that's
exactly. And it's one of those things too where it's like Momoa continues to be like, hey, can I just get roles where I play myself? Cool, thanks.
Basically,
yeah, you can pay me $1 million to play myself. I'll do that. Yeah,
exactly. And I think to Gunn's credit, I think each one of these small little pieces just builds to more when Superman drops. And when Superman the trailer dropped, we all kind of had the same reaction. We're like, oh shit, okay, this is cool. Good tinges, a little nod to the comic people, a little nod to nostalgia, a little nod to like the DC shit. And it's Gunn being Gunn. This could be interesting. Cam?
Before we cut this off, I heard, and I don't think there's any truth to this, but it would be funny if General Zod was played by Henry Cavill.
I saw that.
That would be amazing.
I 100% endorse that. If they can find a role for Cavill in this new DCU, and he be General Zod of this Earth that they're on, because Gunn has already said that he doesn't consider the DCEU as not canon. Exactly. He said he looks at that, and there will be moments where you'll see exactly what he's talking about. Yeah, but he said that is just a part of the ongoing multiverse of DC.
I would fall out of my chair if they actually. I didn't hear any of this, but I would absolutely fall out of my chair if they made that come true. It would be perfect. It would be the perfect circle, 100%.
Absolutely, and he. I think it would give him an opportunity to really flex his acting muscles. Ooh, not like the way. A bad guy like that, like someone who is the opposite spectrum of the Superman Kryptonian. Like
I can hear him uttering the line, the kneel before Zod line.
Kneel before Zod. Like they should do it, but I mean, we put it in the air. Let's hope that we got the Lobo. We'll just throw it in the air.
I'm 2 for 2.
So if it's gonna happen, then Cam has to speak it into existence.
Yeah,
he has to. I'm gonna mute my mic so you can do it.
Please do. We shall all mute.
So James Gunn, if you hear me, focus on me real quick. James Gunn, if you hear us, we need Henry Cavill as Zod, just to bring this full circle and have our moment and give some fan service. And this would be very awesome, very cool thing to do to Cavill, to the fans, and again, what D'Angelo said, to see your acting chops, because General Zod is that dude. So just putting out in the air right now, Cavill, Zod, make it happen.
So it is written, so it shall be done.
Exactly. And
Exactly.
honestly,
Well,
that
really quick,
oh, go ahead,
I,
go
I
ahead.
just wanted to add to what Cam's saying to Mr. Gunn. In fact, I'm going to focus on myself for that. Listen, you kind of owe the man this. You guys bamboozled the guy, so give him that. I mean, because he could do it, and you know he's around. So, and we know that Zod is going to show up, even if he's not the main antagonist for a Superman story. But I think, yeah, give it to him. Let that man be Zod.
And with that, I will leave it there. And once again, thanks everybody for watching and listening. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff. We're gonna be doing a lot more on the video tip, but also thank you for listening to all of us ramble about this dumbness. And we really appreciate it. We got a lot of good things coming up in 2025. So just overall, just wanted to say thank you. And yeah, man, this is Blerdlines, and we out, man. Peace.
One more thought. Nobody better not say Happy New Year to me. It's the 5th.
We out.